This is its town hall reopening plan, and we are pleased to announce that we have Chief Gallagher, our fire chief, with us tonight to discuss some of the updates that he can bring as far as our reopening plans go. And Ms. Hebert will take it from there and give the board a quick update on the reopening plan phase 2. Chief, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, gentlemen, Ms. Hebert. Ms. Leonard up in the cheap seats. You have a daunting task before you to reopen the aspects of government that are controlled by the Board of Selectmen, Parting Ways Building, Town Hall, and other places as well. And there's been an awful lot of effort that's gone in, cooperative effort among all the departments to gather some information and make some recommendations for the board for your consideration. One aspect, and I know Ms. Hebert will be going into detail with some of the other planks of the plan, is something that we've done at the fire station. We shut down our building to the public and to all but essential personnel. And by essential personnel, we determined that to be the full-time staff at Station 1. That was a tough decision to make, but we were able to create a bubble, and we're very selective of who we allowed into the bubble. The full-timers that did, we did medical screening to make sure that everyone was healthy in order to work, and we were following people over a course of a period of time to determine if they were healthy or not. We've been able to augment that recently with the purchase of a kiosk, a freestanding kind of iPad-looking device that allows for the immediate taking of the temperature of whoever stands before it. And it is a preset trigger that if you are above a certain temperature, and it uses lasers to determine what your temperature is, it'll either shine red or green and allow you admittance. That's been proven to be a very effective tool for our building to allow us to bring the call firefighters back into the building, to resume training, to have them come back after calls, where in the past we were just doing everything at the scene, simply because we weren't able to track everyone's health who may or may not show up on a call. So this one device has proven very beneficial for us, just for that initial screening. It doesn't say whether or not you're positive for COVID, it doesn't say if you have any of the other symptoms, but fever being, and a high temperature being one of the initial symptoms of COVID-19, we found a lot of value in that piece of equipment. So we have it at the fire station. We're currently using it. We invite you gentlemen to stop by and take a look at it. And I believe it's part of Ms. Hebert's comments in a few minutes. So,
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
If you want, you can stay at the podium for any other discussion on this topic.
All righty.
I'll come in in a few minutes.
Ms. Hebert?
So what you have before you is a proposal
Yeah.
for phase 2 of the reopening plan. Just to recap what we've already done so far, since I'm not sure we've mentioned it at other meetings. Right now the doors are closed to the public, but recently we've opened up the walk-up window for the treasurer collector's office, which I believe has been a great success. We have limited hours. They are from 9 a.m. to noon, Monday to Thursday, and additional hours on Tuesday nights from 4 to 6. So if anyone wants to come and make a payment, get a receipt, come to the, just walk up the ramp, and you'll see the window right there where the treasurer's office is. That way, masks are required. So this phase 2 proposal is before you whenever you want to enact it, or if you want to make changes to it. But essentially, we're looking at maintaining the flow of people who are going into the building. Other towns have looked at hiring a person to kind of sit and maintain the flow, but Jim and a lot of the other department heads have worked really hard on coming up with a proposal where we don't need to have that person. We've looked at using the Ring doorbell system, which is great because it has the video feed and you can communicate back and forth with people. And it also has a special feature where you can lock and unlock a door. So we're looking at having, say here at Town Hall, you can walk in, the lobby door will be open, but the door to go through the hall will be locked. There'll be a Ring doorbell for each of the pertinent offices there. So if you want the assessors, you ring their bell. They'll talk to you and say, hey, yep, here for an abatement. I'd like to come in. If there's nobody else in the office and it's safe for them to enter, again, we'll have the temperature kiosk if it's approved. So they can see on the video that the person has no fever. They can push a button and it'll essentially buzz the person into the building so they can safely walk up and go into the office. In addition, we'll have, in the proposal, we have other features, basics, markings on the floor to show people where they can walk. If there is capacity, Parting Ways has a lot more space in the halls if they can't allow people to kind of wait in line, having a 6-foot distance. It'll be all marked on the floors. Masks are obviously required. You've brought that up, Chairman, many times.
I have.
That's kind of the big piece of phase 2. The other part that's mentioned here is in relation to public meetings, public hearings, really pushing that they should be virtual because, as you know, last week it went into effect. The limit on the amount of people who can gather in an indoor setting was lowered. And it's really caused a problem for us, even having the schools, we're losing the schools soon, but even having them, we're still limited in that giant space of 25 people. So part of this is also looking at how can we facilitate giant hearings effectively without the schools and with this limitation, and it really comes down to remote meetings. We've worked with cable and I think, I've talked to Nick a little bit as well, to get the settings on our Zoom updated so that we can have an effective hearing where, everybody who joins is muted. There's the button at the bottom, so if you want to participate, you can click and raise your hand. The chair or whoever is managing the meeting would be able to see who's raising their hand and unmute them to ask questions and facilitate a nice meeting that way. I think it's going to be important going forward because it doesn't seem like this is changing and winter's coming and we're losing any outdoor seating or arrangements that we may have. So that's another big piece of this is really pushing to have public hearings and meetings that exceed the capacity virtual. So there's the basis for you.
Mr. DeRoche?
I have one question. These temperature iPads, how long did they take to get? When you purchased them, was it something that 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks?
It was just a matter of days. And I believe the school has ordered several as well.
Okay.
For their facility. I failed to mention that we haven't gotten to this level yet, but we will. The iPad interacts with software that can be set up on a desktop, and that has facial recognition software in there so that you can put photos of town hall staff, and as they check in, their temperature is recorded against their file, and you're able to track their temperature over a course of a week or 2 weeks. So there's a lot of bells and whistles that right now is a little bit beyond my need just to know whether or not somebody coming in has a temperature or not. We'll get there. We just haven't really scratched the surface yet of the equipment.
Because I only ask if we're going to implement phase 2 and it takes a month to get these things, then we couldn't implement for over a month, so.
I understand turnaround time is fairly quick.
But turnaround time is good.
We're going to have a discussion, and that's why I asked the chief to stay, because we got some CARE Act grant discussion that'll have, that's why I asked you to stay at the podium, chief. So with that, Ms. Hebert, I think you defined it pretty well. What we have here, gentlemen, is the reopening plan, and I'd like to thank Ms. Hebert and the staff for Mr. Merritt, especially for opening up what I call our Burger King drive-through window for our collector's office. I was here a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and we had a lot of people that were out there. They were all wearing their masks. They were all standing 6 feet apart, and I think they were all very happy that they could speak to somebody in the collector's office, pay their bill, get a receipt. So the feedback was very positive just from opening up that window compared to where we were before. So it's great work on behalf of our employees and the staff. And again, it's COVID-19, it's a pandemic. It's very difficult to try to move forward with this and make everybody happy, but we're doing the best we can with the circumstances that we were dealt with. So, Chief, I know that there's a plan in here. With that being said, I can go to new business. Number 2 is the CARE grant discussion. You have some kiosks there inside of, so gentlemen, if you go to that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just,
Mr. Warner.
if we can go, just a couple things I'd like to just say for the record for the plan. Julie, thank you for putting this together. I know at our last meeting, we voted on rearranging town hall hours back to where they used to be with a more streamlined 8 to 4. But I think one of the things that's really important is that we have the ability to be flexible empower department heads to make good decisions. And I think the name of the, at the end of the day is we're striving for coverage for our taxpayers. But, one thing I think the board should really think about is really, empowering the department heads to recognize what some of the challenges that the employees may have, especially with going back to school, with different programs and different school districts doing different things, is that if we're able to provide coverage without going dark at any time during the day, then I think that's something we should at least consider moving forward. And then, again, we'll vote on it at our next meeting. But I think with Dr. Bailey being here, it's a real opportunity for us to show a unified front when it comes to openings. And while it may be symbolic in nature, but consider coordinating with our school department to show the community that we're all on the same page. And I just think that sends a good message and is worth the effort to consider. So, I encourage you, Dr. Bailey, to communicate with Julie on that, and just something for us to think about moving forward. I think those little symbolic things are crucial at this time. And the last thing I'm going to say, I'm not totally down on Zoom. I think if anything, this might present an opportunity for people who might not get involved in town government, because you know what? I can't make it on a Tuesday night at 7 to be on a committee, but essentially with Zoom, you can conduct your meetings at any time of the day, right? And especially some of these smaller committees that may not have big dollars tied to them, like for instance the Lake Street Committee. It's a fun thing. We've got a lot of work and people want to do that. I plan on doing a bunch of meetings by Zoom. Could be a Saturday morning, could be a Sunday afternoon, whatever it may be. As long as, I think it could be a unique opportunity to bring some fresh blood into the town and give people an opportunity to serve, physically be in this building to conduct business. I think it's an antiquated way of doing things, and maybe the Zoom thing could be a positive for some of these, less high-profile committees. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. I see you would agree that we've been pretty generous with employees doing certain things and times they need to leave and things of that nature for our closure and everything else. So I think that the board in the past has taken that step for department heads to offer them the flexibility to kind of maneuver and making sure that the staff has been covered and, we gone back, as Mr. Lona has alluded to. So I think we've done that pretty well thus far. I don't think anybody can really complain about that. So hopefully moving forward, we'll continue that. And again, as Mr. Lona stated, school season is back in session. So for those who do have children in school, it may be a little more difficult to get here on time at 8 o'clock in the morning and things of that nature. So the board's very flexible as far as that goes with people with children. With that said, Chief, I noticed there was a very large expense on some of the possible department heads, and it says, I understand why, it says town/school, it says weekly testing, it's obviously the kiosk. I think a lot of that's kiosk.
No, testing's separate.
Oh, that's a separate than the kiosk? Okay, so we have two things. I didn't see, do you have the kiosk things in here? Everything's so small and printed, I mean,
I know. So
nobody can read it. I mean, I'm having difficult time even putting glasses on, but I don't see EMA building upgrades.
it's in the middle. It's under, library has a request for one, police, and then town buildings.
Temperature check.
Yeah.
So, given that it's 7, 3, 10, it's somewhere around the $14,000 mark.
12.6.
Somewhere around the 13, so
Yep.
I was
Yeah.
giving you a little extra. I always kind of round up on it. So this is part of the CARES Act money. That would give us roughly, what is the expense for one kiosk?
I believe it's 1,700.
So roughly about six kiosks. One for each building is what we're proposing.
So
Police,
Ms. Evans
Patty?
has been writing point on this from the different departments.
So there was one request, a request for one from the library, 2 for the police. They would want one for the front where people are and one for staff. And then we had 4 for town buildings, potentially 2 at each building. But COA also had one. It's not separated, but it was within their overall grouping, the various IT upgrades, they listed it there. So I think, everybody, we had a great department head meeting where the chief had it open and people got to test it and everyone really liked it. So pretty much all the department heads had asked for one for their buildings.
And it's important to note that the schools did the procurement check,
Yes.
the mandatory procurement requirements.
Yep.
So,
So as far as, Ms. Bailey, if I could ask you that question now, as far as the school's concerned, because I hate to order 6 or 7, and then I'd rather just do a bulk order, and maybe we can get better pricing on it. The
Sure.
chief, you could probably look into seeing how you order from the company. Maybe if you buy more than 5, you'll get a little bit discount. If you buy more than 10, you get a better discount. That's usually the way it works. Are you all set from the school's point of
I
view?
believe we ordered 8,
Okay,
but Mrs. Flynn will be able to definitely talk about that when she
That's
comes into the
fine.
meeting.
so you did already order some. So chief is basically just make sure that we have the right amount
sure.
before we put an order in. If it's 6, it's 6. If it's 7, it's 7. Does the board, I'd like to get a motion now to endorse that expenditure now and get the chief moving on it. If we're gonna talk about reopening plans, gentlemen, you think it's a good idea to do this?
Yeah.
And make a motion to approve the purchase of X amount of kiosks, you know, whether it be 6, 7, it doesn't matter. Just
Enough for each building?
enough for each building or whatever we need, yeah, because we got 2 for the police department, so whatever.
Mhm.
Whatever we need to order for the kiosk,
Okay.
we can do it from the CARES Act money. We have, there's money in there that was given from the state. So everybody at home understands this is CARES Act money. The state has given the town of Acushnet somewhere around 850, 900
$930,000 was the original
of
amount.
CARES Act money. So it's basically a grant for one-time expenditures, that is. So chief, with that said, the board, is there a motion to approve such an expenditure for the kiosk, temperature kiosk?
So moved.
And I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chief, you got the green light.
I'll work with you to get the final number.
Sure.
Right, we got 8 budgeted here.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Whatever it is, if it's 8, it's 8, if it's 10, it's 10. It is what it is. I think it's a great idea, and thank you, Chief, for looking
Yeah.
into that for us. I think it's great that we have that for our employees and the public.
Julie, is this a good segue to the other topic?
Yeah, are you guys?
Yeah,
ready
you
to
can,
report?
Chief, you can
More
go right
clearance.
into the testing part of it, because I know you want to talk about COVID-19 testing for the schools.
So as you probably know, Wednesday is a very important day. The Department of Public Health releases information on what they're tracking by community for the last 2 weeks. And the governor today released an interactive map that can be found on the DPH website. You can touch Acushnet and it'll show you all the data. So last Wednesday, it was reported that in the last 14 days, 242 tests of residents from Acushnet was taken, and 3 had come back positive. That's an extremely good number. We seem to be doing something right. The community, that is, and more importantly, the residents. And the color coding goes from white to green to yellow to red. You don't want to be red, you want to be white, and that's where we are now. But just to tell you how fluid this is, been working extremely closely with Mr. Correa from the Board of Health. We've been notified by the state this week, and it's only Tuesday, of 3 additional cases. So, you know, it's still very much an issue. It's still here in town. We're getting these notifications slowly, but for the previous 2 weeks, 3, and it looks as if that number will be met, if not exceeded, in the upcoming report. Which brings me to this topic. This is, and if I just may, I've got 34 years under my belt working for this town, and never before have I experienced a level of cooperation on a daily basis between all the departments. No one should question whether or not all oars are in the water rowing in the same direction. I've never talked to a superintendent of schools as much as I have Dr. Bailey. Joe Career is turning into a brother. We're on the phone constantly with Julie and the police chief, council on aging. Everyone is brainstorming to see how we can effectively move forward. And there has been kind of missing from our local plan simply because it was never really on our radar before, and that's community testing. Providing tests here in the community. Instead of having a resident go to their primary care physician or to a clinic or to New Bedford to take advantage of the free testing that the state is putting on, but they won't come to Acushnet. I just had to add that editorial comment. It seems for all of your reopening plans for the schools and for the town facilities, to have capabilities to conduct diagnostic testing, the nasal swab molecular test where mucus is extracted from the nasal cavity, sent off to a lab. They check for the DNA of the virus, and a verdict comes back. So we've been working diligently the last few weeks in trying to put together a plan to present to you that's going to require funding from a source, and that's for you gentlemen to decide if you want to move forward with this. But Dr. Bailey has talked about her reopening plan, the school department's reopening plan, and the details are out there. But we can imagine a scenario where a possible exposure by someone in one of the classroom cohorts requires them to go home and to be tested. So in essence, what you have is 12 students and 2 or 3 staff members, so 15 families completely upended with the notice that their child needs to come home, or they themselves, the adult, needs to go home, and secure testing. So you have 15 different people reaching out, or families reaching out to primary care physicians, to pediatricians, looking for a clinic, all of them using different laboratories that have different response times. So there's a potential mess out there in getting the information back that would allow the school to then decide, does the student come back to class, does the employee come back to work? So we are presenting tonight, and again, this is a cooperative effort of all your departments, a plan to utilize your EMTs who are allowed under the regulations, it's within their scope of practice, to do that type of invasive procedure medically. Secure the services of a lab, and we've been working with a private ambulance company out of the New Bedford area, New Bedford, South Coast, Rhode Island, that has been the leader, is Alert Ambulance. They've been the leader of providing COVID testing to the state of Rhode Island. They do all the nursing homes there. They're picking up private contracts with private vendors to test their employees in the South Coast area as well. And we've been working with one of their vendors, and we were able to secure a price per test that reflects what they're getting on a much larger volume. So we're kind of attaching our wagon to their lab services. So what would happen? Let's play this out. In the school or here in town hall, if an employee or if a resident came in and was later found to be positive, you will have upheaval. Right? We experienced that at the fire department when one of our employees tested positive. And there'll be confusion and there'll be fear. But we would be in a position, if this project goes forward, to respond here immediately, or to the school, or to wherever we are asked to go, with staff that's trained on collecting the specimen, the test kit. A courier would be dispatched to Acushnet to pick up those test kits and deliver them to the lab. And within 24 to 36 hours, the results are sent to a web-based portal where the individual is receiving the results, where medical control, and that's an aspect to this plan. We can't just do this willy-nilly. We have to be working under the guidance of a physician, and we've lined that up. If you gentlemen are agreeable to this, we already have a physician who's our EMS medical director willing to extend himself and take this project on because he knows of our collective interest in public health here in town. So the results are made available. In the event that the test result is positive, the doctor then reaches out to the individual to guide them. And most importantly, from a public health perspective, the notification of those 3 positive cases that we've received over the last 2 days, those test results were probably shared with the state last week. There's a delay. Joe will talk to you about Maven, which is their database where all the results go in and they get correlated, and eventually the positive cases are sent down to local boards of health, but there's a delay in that. Under this plan, the Board of Health would be notified as soon as the individual is notified that they've tested positive, so that the nurses could then start the contact tracing immediately and not lose those 3, 4, maybe 5 days. And you're controlling the spread of the virus that way. So this is I believe, an important component of any reopening plan. And I've been talking with Dr. Bailey. She can envision multiple scenarios where an incident occurs at the school. You then turn to the guidance provided by the Commonwealth, and they'll work their way through that algorithm and protocols, but they'll get to the point where they need testing. And through the CARES Act, we have the funding available. Through our staff, we have the staffing. We've got a great deal on a contract with a lab. We've got medical control all lined up. So all the components are there. Now, it's not cheap. It's $75 per test. But for that, we receive the test kit, the courier, who shows up at the end of the day, and then off it goes to the lab, and then we have the mechanism by which the information is then shared with town officials. I've done quite a bit of research on this, and the average cost for a molecular test is $100. I think, and I'm a little nervous that this is going out over cable, but I think we got a sweetheart deal because we were able to kind of use our affiliation with the private ambulance company to open the door to this. So in essence, we would have a incident response team ready to go, be it town hall, be it DPW, the police department. Chief Richmond's been involved in this, and he is thrilled by the idea of instead of what happened to him last time, where he's calling in favors at the hospital to try to get one of his folks to the front of the line so that we can get him back to work quickly. We would have the ability to just move right in there, get the folks tested, and never mind just the student, but the student's parents, their siblings, anyone else who may have been exposed in order to contain those numbers. So this is not in I don't believe this is in their briefing book. It's something that we've literally been working on right up till 3:30 today to put it together. So what I'm asking is consideration. If you give us the green light, I'm confident that we can make this work. We've been in touch with officials at the Fairhaven Fire Department willing to back us up in the event that we have the need for more trained medics to come in to do the testing based on what the incident is or however this plays out. We would do the same with them, provide mutual aid, if you will, for COVID testing. So I think we've checked all the boxes to be able to come to you today and say that in our collective opinion, this is a solid plan. This is something that's missing from the community, and it's something that really is key to successful reopenings of both the school, town buildings, and the like.
John?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's an outside-the-box idea. And if you look at the entities that have done integration successfully, look at the NBA, they have testing. Professional sports leagues, you got some who aren't doing it very well, Major League Baseball, but if you look at some of these entities that are doing testing or providing that opportunity, if anything, it shows people that maybe takes a little bit of the fear factor out of it. So I'm on board. I'd like to see a little more conceptually to go forward with a plan and maybe report back to the board. We want to slow things down, but I would ask Dr. Bailey that you work it through your school committee and make sure that they're on board as well, that we can provide the opportunity, and I kind of view this as town hall, school is phase 1, and see how that goes, and if it works well, then maybe you extend it to our most vulnerable population in town, our elders, presidential terrorists and council on aging, see where that plays out, and then maybe you expand it to any resident who might feel that they're coming down with something. But I think the schools and town hall, our town employees should be our number one priority right now, because they're the most exposed. So I'm on board.
We would need time to crawl before we walk and walk before we run. So this would be a new endeavor for us. There's not a model of a community providing this, so we'd be kind of inventing this as we go along. But I'm confident that we'd be able to do it. And one of the things that Dr. Bailey just pointed out is, the saving of lost employee time. If for an example, and I'll be careful not to disclose, but there is a department in town that has 2 employees that were notified that someone they were with socially tested positive. And it took those employees 4 days to secure testing. That's 4 lost days at work where we could have rolled in immediately, got the test, and 24 to 36 hours later, the decision is, they're getting the final word. So, from a management point of view, to be able to turn around that downtime and get people back to work, students back to school, or if they test positive, off to definitive care, which is hugely important. I'm anticipating some of the questions that you may have. Insurance is not a player in this. Private insurance and government insurance will not pay for testing if you are asymptomatic. If you have a symptom and you go to your primary care physician and he or she orders a test, insurance companies of varying degrees will pick up that expense. But as a diagnostic tool, insurance company doesn't pick that up.
Chief, on the test, the actual test itself, I've had a test, and it was the non-intrusive nasal swab test, where they just do a circular motion in the nasal.
Yep.
And then there's the other one where they make it's very invasive, right? And it feels like they're in your throat.
Right.
I've heard of people having that one earlier on when COVID-19.
Right.
This is just the non-invasive where they go in and just do this.
We would be arranging for training of our folks, and from what I understand, the skill session includes mannequins, and I believe that the intrusion is pretty deep. Those are the tests that we've all undergone when we had an exposure.
So it's the deep nasal?
It's the deep nasal, yeah. Yeah, it can be modified, if there's a kindergarten student that needs it, there's different modifications that can be done, but I believe you have to have, from what I understand, a saturated swab of mucus, nasal mucus from the nasopharyngeal airway, and that requires going back fairly deep. So it's one of those where it's cringe-worthy, as you know, Mr. Chairman. Thinking about it, it's cringe-worthy when it's happening, and you're just thanking your lucky stars when it's done.
Yeah, there's just multiple tests out there. I mean, they got saliva tests now and everything else. I just didn't know if there was a special requirement for it to be that test, the intrusive,
Well, we looked at
versus
that.
the internal nasal swab. And that's what the hospital
Yep.
doctor's office was doing, is you just come in and you have
And it
a
may be
separate
that way.
appointment. This is the time you come in, you
Yep.
wait in line, and you go in, they put it in the little bag and send it off.
Yeah.
And
We haven't gotten to the weeds that deeply with the lab yet, as to, the mechanics of it. We've been kind of arranging the big picture items. But there are multiple tests. We trialed a finger stick with a drop of blood in a small little tray, and it tests the antibodies in your body as to whether or not you've built up any antibodies because you've been exposed. That's great for being able to tell you where you've been, but it doesn't tell you where you are currently. And just as a disclaimer, 4 of us practiced on each other on Friday, just to make sure that we were able to conduct the test, and all 4 of us came back negative, including the employee that had COVID. So his should have glowed, and it didn't. So there are some concerns about the efficacy of those tests.
I know. There's concerns about everything that's
Right.
going on with COVID-19. I mean, no matter how great of a plan you think you have, there's a flaw in the plan, right? We can only do, so as far as Ms. Bailey goes, as far as the school goes, in the student, if it would be a student or faculty, they have an opt-in or opt-out.
Absolutely.
They don't have to do this via the town. They can choose to opt out and go to their own.
And they can quarantine for the whole time versus getting a test result where they can come back to school or work sooner.
So
They have to be quarantined.
There's an option.
Yep.
Okay. Mrs. DeRoche, you have anything?
Well, I'm open to the idea. I mean, speeding up the process to get the test results from 4 to 6 days to 24 to 36 hours is very, very promising. And again, this money's going to be coming from the CARES Act.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the implementation, of course, I have questions and start thinking and multiplying, well, if this kid gets it and the teacher and how it's all going to play out. But I think having the testing available and being able to speed up the process is a very important part of it. So,
Mr. Chairman, with all that in consideration, could make a motion to ask the chief to go forward with developing a plan and report back to the board.
Certainly,
I think,
we'll put together a written plan.
Take into account
yeah.
what, how the school will handle it, how town hall, we bring in the school nurse, whatever, the meat on the bone so we can have a handling. In the meantime, if you have individual questions, we can filter those to the chief. Before it's worth, I'm a visual learner, so.
And Mr. Wona, I took notes on the phases. So maybe as an addendum to that report, we could explore possible phased-in expansion of this project, once we kind of get it going. And hopefully get some very good successes.
Ms. Hebert?
And if I can too, we'll work on a cost estimate, because I know you didn't get this plan, because again, Chief has been fine tuning it like crazy. So what you do have in here, in your packets, was an original estimate that we plugged in $156,000. That was the original plan. It's been fine tuned since then. So we'll work on an estimate, because going along with this, we're using CARES money. So I know you all are tasked with how do we spend that money down, and we'll want to make sure we have something that's reasonable for you guys as well.
The idea is not to use any of the testing money. Think
People
about
on
it.
set, right?
Yeah.
You don't want anybody to have it, right? This is just a precautionary measure that we're gonna take, being proactive towards COVID-19 and the reopening of the schools and town hall and things of that nature, that if we were to come across a case, we have the tools in place to do the testing ourselves and expedite that test. In the relief, quite honestly, to the family of the child, if it happens to be a child, to give some security in their mind, saying my child's okay and I don't have to worry about it. I'm sure that the school's got protocols in place where if your son sneezes or your daughter sneezes, your child is sneezing, coughing, itching, headache relief medicine type thing, don't bring them to school, don't allow them to come to school and things of that nature, but we always know that can still slip by, because you don't, quite honestly, don't have to show any symptoms of anything, and you could have it, as you said, asymptomatic, right? You can still be a passer of the COVID pandemic, so it's a tricky thing, something for us to think about, and as Mr. Selectman Wona stated, get a better plan, put it in 156, I mean, it's $75 a test, it's only gonna, we'll be capable of testing so many people that we already know that. What is the 75 divided into the 156? That allows us, 300, 400, 500 tests, whatever that number comes out to. And obviously, hopefully, we'll be nowhere near that, but, again, as the phases of the CARES Act comes out, hopefully we'll be okay and we won't have to do too much. But with the schools, it's gonna be pretty tricky, because I talked to Ms. Hebert this afternoon about that testing thing, and I said it's tough, because if you have a class of 10 and you have a school teacher, whoever else that kid came in contact with, that child may have came in contact with, right?
Bus.
And then there's a school bus that's transporting them too, so it's not only the kid that's in that classroom and those 10 kids on that day that kid's, you also gotta look at everybody that's on that school bus and then their families as well. So it could escalate the problem and the testing requirements associated with one case. You could be at 50, 60 tests.
Yeah. So I'm looking at this, gentleman, as similar to your fire department. We invest millions of dollars in apparatus and training. We hope that we never use it. And we could put together a plan for you, acquire the assets, have people trained. We don't want to use it, but in the event that there's a situation, we'll be able to, get in here, get into the site, do the testing, get the results back, and attempt, hopefully, to get that family, that employee, back to normal quickly.
So I was gonna say, here's my prediction. I think based on your track record, your career doing things like this, the capabilities of the school department, I'm gonna make a prediction that this will become a model program for other communities, and will get the attention of the state, and then eventually some type of testing mechanism for municipalities will be something of the norm. So I wish you luck, and I'm supportive of that.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, $75 a pop, that gives us about 2,100 tests
For that.
for budget.
Oh, we have it
purposes,
on
yeah.
hand.
Yeah,
That's fine.
So,
yeah, there's a lot of tests.
I'm sure the chief now the chief knows the board is somewhat endorsing this plan.
Sure.
You know, I guess we're endorsing it, we just
Sure.
want a little more
Get details.
defined plan in front of us other than just a number.
Right.
Associated with
Especially the number that
more
large.
documentation, the chain of command, how it would all go through and all that stuff like that, so.
Very good.
It's
Thank you.
great, thank you, chief.
Thank you very much.
That's all the time I can give you today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, chief, for coming in.
Thank you.